Hello and welcome to a tutorial that I'm going to be running on just getting set up with Premiere Pro and sort of going over some of those basic things so that you can get set up and running very quickly and easily in the system. Okay, so just a little bit of background. This is a Mac that we're working on. It's an iMac, so if things look slightly different, that's why, but hopefully they shouldn't look too different. Okay, so we're just going to start with opening up Premiere. You can see that I've put it here on my dock here at the bottom, but it should be there for you. Now, obviously, this tutorial is assuming that you've signed in and you've created your account with Adobe and that you've downloaded the software legitimately. So you can see this is just a loading screen, and it tells you here. You'll see that flashing by. That's all that is. It's just to let you know what it's doing. Okay, so the first, it's just going to load up here. So this is it's sort of a project window, if you will. And this tells you all your different projects that you've recently been working on. Usually for quick access, for you, it might be empty. If this is the first time that you've opened Premiere Pro, you can see here that I've got a lot of projects open. So this window also might be slightly differently sized. For some people it's slightly smaller, for some people it isn't. So we're going to go over here to the left hand side where it says new project, and we're just going to click new project. Now it will automatically default to the last place that you save the project file. We're gonna just walk through this a little bit. So the name is obviously, that's whatever you want to call it, and I would recommend for this tutorial that you just call it something very, very simple. So I'm going to call it video tutorials because that's what I'm doing. And then what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to go an underscore and then I'm putting CC 2021. What's that all about? Well, that's the version that I'm creating this on. We're currently working on Premiere Pro 2021, and so I'm putting that in the title. This is helpful if you're dealing with lots of different projects, because especially over a long period of time, because sometimes it's very helpful so you know what version of the project file it was on. Okay, so in the location here, if you click on this drop down, it will give you a couple of different suggestions as to where it might want you to put it. By default, yours might be in your user area, in your documents, but we don't want that. We want to click the browse button, and again, it's going to come up with your last known location. But we don't want this. We want this on a different hard drive in this one. Now, when you're at this stage, I would recommend that you create a new folder, and you call it project file. Now, if you think you're going to be working with After Effects and even Photoshop, I'd recommend maybe creating project files there. And then what we're also going to do there is just create a new folder in there. I'm going to call it Adobe Premiere Pro. Now, the reason that we're doing this is because Premiere Pro is going to create lots of files for you. It's going to create lots of folders within that, and you just want to make sure that they're all nested in the same place so that Adobe doesn't get confused and you don't get confused when you see cropping up loads of different new folders. Okay, so we're just going to hit choose from there, and you can see it should update to where it says your new area. Okay, most of this, for the sake of this tutorial, you can leave alone. Again, you want to make sure that everything is unselected at the moment, or everything is same as project. Okay, I might do a more in-depth, more advanced tutorial on how to get your ingest settings and all that sort of stuff. But for just getting up and running, we don't want that. Okay, so then you're going to just click OK, and it might take a few minutes. Might just take a few minutes to load up, which is fine. And while it's loading up, what we're going to do in this little tutorial is we're just going to sort of show you around Premiere Pro and let you know what's going on. Okay, so what I'm going to do just for the sake of this, I'm going to hide my dock. If you guys want to know how to do that, it's on a Mac, it's Command-Alt-D, and that'll just do that. And I'm going to click this green button here just to full screen. That's just so it's not distracting. Okay, so this is the Premiere Pro window. Now, first of all, a little disclaimer, yours might look a little bit different. One of the good things about Premiere Pro is that you can change the window around. You can really resize things how you want it. You can move things around all the time to really fit your best flow. But if you want to see how it would look, you want to be going up here to Window, Workspaces, Reset to Saved Layout. And that's just going to default to what it would be. Okay, now what you can see here is that where along this top panel here is that we've got some tabs here. And what Premiere Pro has done here is it's essentially grouped together all the different tools that it has into easy windows so that you can very quickly flick between them. Okay, so you can see we're in the Graphics tab here, but for now you probably want to be clicking on the Editing window because that's what it is. Now I've changed this around. You can see I've got. Okay, so let's just pause here. There are some different windows here in Premiere. Now this is where your timeline is going to be, or your sequences are going to be. Okay, this little bit down here. Let me just change it to Save Layout. So hopefully this should be how yours looks. Okay. Now this little what Premiere will do is you've got loads of different tabs here that are all going to tell you different things. And what you'll quickly realise is a lot of these tabs you won't use very often. Some of these tabs you'll use a lot. So sometimes what can be best is if we import some footage so you can start to see how it looks. So what you want to be going down here is this little tab. These are your bins. And you see how it has a project, and that's the project name. Okay, so just a little bit of lingo here. The editing softwares will use the term bin, but in your mind you might want to replace the word bin with folder. It just comes from the old way of editing that it would literally be stacks of bins. So you can import media in a few different ways. So you can right click and you can click import there. You can go File, Import, or if you wanted to go into the Assembly tab, you can go into the media browser. This is how we're going to use it at the moment. We're going to use the media browser. Okay, and this is going to be it's a version of your hard drive that exists on here. Okay, so you can see we're going to go into our tutorials folder in the hard drive that we're in. And you can see I've created a folder already for our source materials. Source materials is just a word that often a way of editing, a way that editors will describe as your footage and your materials that you're going to use to edit. Okay, so you can see I've downloaded this footage from a website called Pexels, so I've put it in there. Okay, see we've got some clips there. So I'm just going to highlight them all, and I'm just going to right click and then click on import. That's going to come up with a little progress window and it's going to import some files for us. Sometimes, depending on how big your files are, this can take a little while. Okay, and we should be in here. Okay, so let's go back onto our editing window now. Okay, so you can see that it's displaying them all like this, all in a list format, and you can decide how you want that sorted. So I'm going to title it by name. I'm also going to change. Now, actually what I'm going to do just while I show you this, you can full screen each window by pressing the little squiggly line key next to the Z key on your keyboard. And what that's going to do is it's just going to full screen that window so you can see it in a little bit more detail. Now don't worry, this might look very confusing. It isn't. For the sake of this tutorial, we're not going to look at it too much. I've just full screen this window so I can show you. You can hear down at the bottom here, you've got your different views. Okay, so you've got your list view, which we're in currently, and then you've got icon view. And what that's going to do is it's going to show you the clips with some thumbnails, which is obviously very nice. And you can adjust the scale here, depending on your machine, depending on how much you want to see it. So you can see we can make these nice and large. Now you can see here the footage that we've imported. Some of it is horizontal, is landscape, and some of it is a portrait view. And you can see here what I'm doing in icon view is I can scrub through just by hovering my mouse over, not by pressing any buttons, and I can hover through the window so I can see a little bit of a preview as to what the clips look like. Okay, and what I can do is I can still move clips around if I want to. So let's say I wanted to put all of my portrait clips together. Okay, and if I click Shift, I can move these around perfectly fine here. So you can see you can start doing a little bit of that. Then we also have Freeform View. which is, so now it might take a little while just to load it, but what these are, this is not bound to any grid. So what you can do is you can group all your clips together. So maybe I want to group this what looks like a little scene of him getting his hair cut. I might want to group together all of this stuff of him playing the instrument. Might want to group together all the different ways of here, all these two people smoking. Okay, so you can see how that could, and again you can search, you can move these around however you want. I tend not to use this feature too much, but for some people it's quite helpful in starting to very quickly visualize what your scenes are. Okay, so we're going to come out of this view. I'm going to go to icon view. Okay, and I'm going to just click that little key, and we're going to go back to here. I'm going to just reduce the size a little bit. Okay, so how do we actually start working with clips here? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click the first one. Now if I double click the first one, what it's going to do is it's going to open it in what's called our source window, which is this clip. So if I double click that, it's going to open in this window. And what this source window is it's a way for you to review the footage as you're going through. Now there are a couple of different ways that you can move, you can scroll along your footage. You can grab this marker here and move it along that way. You can see I can go forwards and backwards. Okay, I can scroll. Now I've got a magic mouse, so I can scroll either horizontally, and it will go back and forth in that direction. I can also scroll up and down. If I scroll up, it goes forwards, and if I scroll down, it goes backwards. Now I can also click on this key here, and this is called the hot time code. And what this is, if you click on it, your cursor is going to disappear, and you can sort of scroll a lot. So once I've clicked, I could go like with this. If you look at the movement of my key, once I'm clicked, I can move up and down, and it's going to shift it up. So if I click and I move the key to the right there, it's going up, and if I move my mouse to the left, it's going up there. It's a very quick way of scrolling up and down your footage. Okay, I can also just press play, and that's going to just play the footage at regular speed. I can also press the spacebar, which is going to play it. A little bit of a hint here, a little bit of a tip here. If you want to play your footage at faster or lower speeds, once you've pressed your spacebar, if you press L, it's going to play it at slightly faster, and if you press L again, it's going to play it a lot faster. Okay, so we're at the end of the clip there. Okay, so I'll just scroll back to the beginning here just so I can show you. So I'm going to press thing, so you can see it. So I'm pressing L now to speed through it a little bit quicker. But what I can also press is J, and what that's going to play is play it backwards. Okay, and again it works the same way. So if I want to play it in backwards quicker, then I can do. Okay, so just a little bit of thing there. So this hot one, this one in a different color, that's your playhead position, and this is your duration. Okay, so let's get a sequence going here. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways you can make a sequence. One of the things that you'll quickly find about Premiere Pro is that there's lots of different ways you can do things, so you can really work with it how you want to work with it. So you can find a little space here, a little blank space on here, right click, new item sequence. You can click on one of these keys down here, which is the new item key. You can see the new bin folder, it looks like a little folder. New item, and again, you've got a sequence. You can go to File, New Sequence. I think you can't go to sequence. Okay, you can do it that way. Or if you did want to be lazy, I don't recommend that you do this. You can drag a clip into this empty window here, and it will create a new sequence. Just a little tip there. Let's just do that here. So I'm going to drag this first clip into here. You can see the little icon change. and you've created a sequence. Okay, but you can see what it's done here. You see that it's got the little sequence icon next to it, which is a blue icon with a with some clips on it. It's called it exactly the same as the clip name, and it's also put it in the bin that that your footage is in. You generally don't want to do this, so we're going to go, and instead of a delete, it's called a clear. Okay, but we're going to go File, New, Sequence. Okay, so this is where people can get a little bit confused. Most of these presets I would ignore, just because they're generally designed for very specific things. What we want to go over is into our settings. The first thing that we want to go when we set editing mode is just scroll up a little bit where it says custom. Okay, so let's go through this a little bit. So our time base is our frames per second. Okay, for most YouTube videos, you either want it at 25 or 30 frames per second. 24 frames per second is generally reserved for films and sometimes broadcasting. But you can see how you can go up and down depending on how many frames you want. So we're just going to click 30 frames. Okay, so our video size, our frame size, that's how big and what shape you want your frame to be. Okay, you see it will automatically default to 1920 by 1080. And what this is as you can see here, it gives you your aspect ratio, is our 16 by 9 aspect ratio. Just a little side note about aspect ratios, all they are, it's the ratio from horizontal pixels to vertical pixels. Okay, I'm just going to give you some very simple ones. Most people you will want to use 16 by 9 aspect ratio for. For most YouTube videos, that's what you're going to see. And generally for most submissions and things like that, you will need it in a 16 by 9 format. If you wanted to be a little bit more artistic, you could go in a 4 by 3 aspect ratio, which is 1440 pixels, and you can see there that it's automatically adjusted to 4 by 3. Okay, if you wanted to go particularly widescreen, more of a cinematic aspect ratio, you could go for a 1920 by 800, which will give you a 12:5 aspect ratio. That's a little bit more cinematic. Okay, but we're not going to go for that. We're just going to go for 1080p. Okay, and if you want to know what the 4K resolutions are, you simply double these. Okay, so instead of, if you wanted it to be 4K, you would go 3840 by 2160, and you can see it's defaulted back. That's exactly how large it's going to be. But we don't want that. We just want 1920 by 1080. Okay, something that you want to just quickly look at is your pixel aspect ratio. You want that to be on square pixels. Okay, sometimes if you load it up and it looks all wrong, it's because your pixels, you've got one of these strange, you've got one of these other pixels on. Okay, in terms of field, you generally want all of this, upper field first. You generally want no fields, progressive scan. Again, display format, you want that to be the same, that number to be the same as that number. And again, you want Rec 709. And your audio, again, if you're working if you've got an audio person on board and you've recorded it at different hertz, then yep, change that. Yep, you want your audio samples. Most of this you will want to leave alone. Again, just for this basic setup. Okay, so we're going to name our sequence. So we're going to call it, let's just call it sequence 1 for now. Okay, you can change that, and you can see this is our sequence window. You can see it's black, whereas this is our source window. Okay, so what we're going to do is, how do we get some footage, some clips onto our timeline? Okay, so let's take this first clip. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it. So you need to get it up in this source window here, and what you can either do is you can either drag, if you drag it, you can either drag the picture here as you see it. What that's going to do, you're going to turn to a little hand, and your clip is going to come onto the timeline here. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Okay, now this is going to come up. The clip does not match the sequence settings. Change sequence to match the clip settings. Usually, I want to keep existing settings. All that's telling me is that the clip is a slightly different size to the sequence. Okay, so there's another way we can do it. We can either grab Now these clips are just video only, but if they were video and audio, this section wouldn't be grayed out, and you can just grab one element or the other. Okay, I'm going to turn that off just for the sake of this. Okay, so you can see it's done that. There's also some other ways down here. You can either, next to your player buttons, you can click Insert, which is going to just put it in at your playhead. You could overwrite it, which is going to put it in the same. Again, because of the tutorial today, we're not going to really get into inserts and overwrites, but for now, you might just want to be dragging it. You can also drag it straight from your project window. You can just drag it straight like that, if you really wanted to. Okay, so what we're going to do now, one of the things you also want to be doing when you're working, inserting, one way that some people like to edit is they like to set what's called their in and out points here in the source window. So what that means, it's sometimes easier just to show. So let's say I like this. So I want to start the clip with the cigarette in her mouth. So I'm going to click the I button on my keyboard, and that's going to set an in point. I could have also clicked it here, mark in or mark out. Okay, and then I'm going to play the footage, see where I want the clip to stop. Maybe that's where I want the video to stop. So I'm going to press O on my keyboard, and you can see that's what it's done here. Is it's made a selection area, saying this area still continues, but this is what we've selected, and this little duration has updated for that. So if I wanted to update that, you can see how it's a lot smaller now because it's only inserted the clip, the duration that we've selected. Okay. Now let's just talk quickly about this. Now you can see here, this is the full resolution of the image, but this looks really cropped in. Why is that? Because this is a 4K timeline. This is a 4K clip on just a regular HD timeline. So we're going to go over into our effects controls here. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to make sure that this clip is selected, and you'll know that because the border will turn white. And you can see here we've got a few different options here for what we can do. We could affect the opacity, make it go in and out of opacity. Obviously, because nothing's underneath it at this point, then it's just going to look like it's going darker and lighter. But what we want to be looking at here is the scale. Now, if you drag it, if you click it, the cursor's going to disappear. Again, if you drag it to the left or the right, you're going to get this sort of hot time code thing, and you can do it by eye. You could have also just clicked once, and it'll come up with a thing, and you can type in, whatever scale you want to have your clip be at. If you know that it's like, for example, with this clip, that it's exactly twice as large as it needs to be. So we know that we just need every clip on a scale of 50. Okay, so you can see here how we've got this. Okay, now just a little note here about let's just insert another clip really quickly, just so I'm going to click the in point and the out point here. So the way that Premiere works is that it works top down. Okay, so what it's going to do, you can see here how we've got this clip showing. If we put this other clip on top of this clip, now that clip's going to be shown. Let's just go into our effects, make that the right size. Okay, so you can see how this clip underneath, let's change the colour. If you want to change the colour, you just right click, you go to left, and go to label, and you've got some colours there. So let's change it to orange and blue, just so it's nice and clear for this. Now if you want to zoom in on your timeline, you can just press the plus or minus keys on your keyboard. You can also scroll in and out on here. This is sort of like a dynamic zoom. Okay, so Premiere looks at your clips from the top down. Okay, so you can see here this blue clip is the one above, and that's why it's showing. If we were to move the orange clip above, it would be the orange clip that's showing. Okay, Now you can see here now that we've got this big space in between. Now you can click on these spaces and you can edit them. And if I just press the backspace, it would shift that up right to the beginning. You see you've got your time code here. And this is your playhead position. This is your playhead, this blue bar, this is where you're at the moment. Okay, and this little yellow bar, just so you're aware, it's basically the progress of how much it's rendered. Okay, most of the time it will be on yellow, but if, for example, you put on a crazy effect, it might turn red. Okay, and that means that the effect hasn't rendered yet, so it might cause some delays. Okay, so you can see though that what we can do here to start building a little sequence is placing these clips next to each other. Now I've got it on snapping, and you can tell it's on snapping because it's got here snap in timeline. And it's just going to click here, and you can see very quickly how you could start building a timeline. Now if it came up, you might have seen there, it just flashed media pending. That's fine. It usually just means that, Premiere is looking for the clips. Okay, so we're just going to go and throw a few clips together. Okay, so I've got some clips on the timeline now, but what happens if I want to edit that? For example, we can see here that she breathes the smoke out. What if I wanted to cut it about there and bring it in? So by default, it should be red, and if you hover to the end of the clip, it should come up with a red thing. If you click that, you can see how you've got that little red icon there, and you can drag this in. Okay, what that's going to do is it's going to drag it in, but it's going to create this little gap here. Okay, now you can do this a few ways. You can either just then click this and drag it up, and that's going to create that. Let me just change the size of that so you can see it a bit more clearly. Okay, but let's say we want it to be a bit more, a bit better than that. If I press B on my keyboard, what it's going to come up with is a slightly different tool. It's called our Ripple Edit tool, and you can get to it by just going into our Tools menu here. I might do a little tutorial on tools just because they're quite helpful. And what that will do, if I then click and drag it up this way, what it's going to do is it's going to ripple edit it. So it's not going to create a gap. It's just going to trim it off at the start without moving it. Okay. So this can be very, very good as a way of getting that edit nice and fine without having to mess around with moving clips. Okay, so let's say I just want it a little bit more, bring it in. Okay, now let's say, oh, I've brought it in too much. Well, I can just go and drag it the other way, and as long as there's media there, it's going to up there. Okay. So you can see now how you could hopefully very quickly start building a little timeline for your clips. Just in case you were wondering, if you wanted to add any text to the clip, you can just go to your tools here and you can click the type tool. Okay, so let's call it, let's just call it, now just as a little aside here, again, you can work with these graphic clips exactly the same ways that you would work with a regular clip, so I can drag it in, make it look like that. Now, generally what we will want to do here, if we're working with graphics, is go to our Graphics tab. Graphics tab gives you a little bit more tools to work with. So this will open our Essential Graphics tab. And you can browse some templates that Adobe will give you. Or you can just go into Edit and edit your current one. So let's go into Edit, and you can see here it's got the red box around it. That means that you're editing it. So let's just create a slightly different title here. Let's use this title. Actually, let's not. But you can see here how you can just scroll through fonts and find some ones that you like. I like that one. Okay, and you can see you've got this. You can make your text bigger and smaller by just grabbing under here. And what this does is this is where you can get all your bolds, so your various alternatives. If that font comes with an alternative, then it will come up here. Now you can see you can move it around in the window itself, and Premiere Pro now has some great snapping features, so you can snap it to centers and things like that. Okay. So you can see you can really spend a little bit of time getting that right. I think I'm going to want it just as it was. Okay. Let's call this video stairs. Okay. Now you can change the center alignment. Now what we're going to do is going to look slightly different. This isn't a particular video on graphics, but you can hopefully see how you can quickly get set up there with some graphics. Okay. I'm going to go back to our editing tab. You can see that has updated like that. Okay. Okay, so hopefully this video has helped you in just getting set up in Premiere Pro and getting your first clips onto the timeline so you can start working with clips and start actually building a little timeline here for what you might need there. If you would like me to do more of these, please let me know in the comments. Please let me know about any questions that you have. I'm happy to do an expanded version of this where we go into detail a lot more about more aspects of Premiere Pro. So yeah, let me know, and thank you for watching, and I hope it's been helpful, and I'll see you soon. Bye.